Welcome again to our YouTube channel. It has been a minute. Faith is not linear logic. Faith is not linear thinking. Faith is not sequential. Faith is not a sequential argument. For those people who have faith, you must know that faith operates outside linear thinking. That faith operates outside linear thinking. Faith is not 1, 2, 3. Faith is not A plus B equals C. A is not A, B, C. It's not A plus B plus is equals C. No. For some people in the society think that when you do good or when you do good things will happen to you. That's not the case. That whenever you do good, that good things will happen to you. That is not the case. Faith does not work like that. It doesn't work like that. That when you do good things will happen to you. No, that's not how faith works. Faith requires trusting unseen outcomes and paradoxes. People say, I have faith. Okay, you have faith. But you have to remember, faith is not linear thinking. It's not linear logic. It does not mean that when you do good things, therefore good things will happen to you. No. Faith is not A, B equals to C. Or faith is not 1, 2, 3. Faith is not sequential thinking. It's not sequential arguments. No. Faith requires trusting unseen outcomes and paradoxes. Paradoxes such as the Trinity, the divinity, divine grace, etc. Faith sometimes, and more often than not, deals with paradoxes that defies human logic. That faith, more often than not, deals with paradoxes that defies human logic. Those paradoxes, they defy human logic. How do they come to happen? If you depend on human logic, you will walk away from faith. In some instances, when you are dealing with such paradoxes, linear thinking relies on evidence and sequential reasoning. Linear thinking relies on evidence and sequential reasoning. While on the other side, faith trusts despite uncertainties. Faith trusts despite uncertainties. Why? Because it prioritizes. It makes it priority, or it prioritizes heart-centered belief. Heart-centered belief. And it does so over rational analysis of circumstances. That means faith prioritizes or makes it its priority. Center, that is heart-centered belief, a belief that comes from the heart, heart-centered belief over rational analysis of circumstances. This is why many who take pride in intellectualism have walked away from faith. Many who have taken pride in intellectualism, logic, linear thinking, many of them have walked away from faith because they find almost everything in Scripture contradictory. Even if they find one contradiction, they will walk away from the faith because that does not make any sense, because they are into linear thinking, linear logic, evidence, and analysis of circumstances. While true faith involves circuitous route, or circuitous route, as people will say, rather than straight paths. It can go round and round and round and round and round, while logic is just straight thinking, requiring the straight path. But trust and faith wants you even to go and use unclear paths. You are using paths in faith that are very unclear. That means faith takes like detours. It takes you round and round, especially when faith articles seem to contradict natural reason and logic. Some faith articles seem to contradict natural reason and logic. That's when faith takes you in circuitous or in kind of a circle thing. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Faith takes you through detours. It's not just a straight line of thinking. It's not a straight logic. It's not a straight path. Especially when we have some articles of faith that seem to be contradicting each other. At that moment, one needs to take a pause. Just take a moment and stop. Take a pause and consult with faith. And when you engage reason, you engage that reason as you consult your belief. As you use your reason, do not divorce your faith, your heart belief, your heart-centered belief. For example, God being human and divine at the same time. Linear logic will find it very difficult to believe in that. How can he be human and divine? How is that possible? God is human and divine. And this God we are talking about, who is human and divine, we talk about him in the man called Christ, or in the person called Christ. How can God be both divine and human? It defies human reason, human logic. This calls for acceptance beyond analytical understanding. God being human and divine calls for acceptance beyond analytical understanding. Overthinking or relying solely on a logical or linear analysis can act as a distraction of your faith and can easily foster fear in believing. That overthinking or relying solely on logical or linear analysis can act as a distraction of your faith and easily foster fear of faith or belief. Faith, in most cases, is a matter of the heart, supported by reason. Faith is a matter of the heart, supported by reason. Faith is not a creation of reason. It is a matter of the heart, supported by reason. Logic is always limited. Logic is always limited because critical thinking often finds inconsistencies in religious stories. But faith finds meaning through spiritual, non-linear interpretation. That while logic finds inconsistencies in religious stories, faith, on the other hand, finds meaning through spiritual, non-linear interpretation. Faith can easily or can seriously conflict with logic. Faith can easily and more often than not seriously conflict with logic. Therefore, if one depends solely on logic, this person will walk away from faith. And we have said faith is a matter of the heart, supported by logic. It's not a creation of logic and supported by the heart. No, it's a matter of the heart, supported by logic. Therefore, believers must overcome analytical roadblocks. Analytical roadblocks of faith. That whenever you have scenarios, for example, whenever you have scenarios with no logical solution, as a believer, you have to rely on spiritual conviction rather than visible evidence. That as a believer, when we are working on our spiritual roadblocks or analytical roadblocks of faith, that whenever we are in such scenarios where we have no logical solution, as a believer, as a man of faith, or as a woman of faith, you must rely on spiritual conviction rather than visible evidence. Spiritual conviction rather than spiritual or visible evidence. Sometimes people want evidence, visible evidence. When we're in such scenarios where there's no logical solution, we have to rely on spiritual conviction rather than visible evidence. Believers are called to focus on the purpose of life and faith rather than overanalyzing circumstances and situations of life. We are to find the divine purpose rather than over-analyzing faith matters. For faith to work well in our lives, we need also to work on our cultural perspectives. Sometimes our cultural perspectives may hinder us from growing in faith. So we have to work on our cultural perspectives, or what we can call worldviews. We have to work on those worldviews that we have taken from our cultures. Indeed, some studies have revealed that the Western world is more linear in thinking than the rest of the world. The Western world is more linear in thinking than the rest of the world, meaning the rest of the world who are non linear in logic. They are non-linear in logic, which often aligns better with biblical narratives. That the Western world is more linear in thinking, unlike the rest of the world that is non-linear in their logic, which makes them more often better aligned with biblical narratives. Hence, what we see in the world today, we see the increase and the growth of faith and church in those regions of the world. Asia and Africa especially. We see this increase and the growth of faith and church. Why? Because most of those regions are non-linear in thinking, non-linear in logic, while the Western world is more linear in their logic. For non-linear thinkers, they view biblical narratives as grand stories. They are non-linear stories. They are grand stories, great stories. They do not see them as a set of sequential arguments. They are not a set of sequential arguments. They see them as grand stories, grand narratives, great stories to listen to. And they don't see them as a set of sequential arguments. The question is, how effective are you in dealing with your kind of logic? What kind of logic do you have? Do you have linear logic, or yours is non-linear logic? How does it help you to grow in faith? How do you deal with your logic with regard to your faith? What leads you in your faith? Is it your heart supported by your logic, or your logic supported by your heart? How easy do you find it in dealing with faith paradoxes? How easy do you find it in dealing with faith paradoxes? Just a food for thought. But remember, faith is not linear logic. Faith is not linear thinking. Faith asks and requests of you to trust outside, to trust unseen outcomes. Faith is not a set of sequential arguments. Faith is not based on evidence. Faith asks for trust for an unseen outcomes. Faith is not linear logic. Faith is not linear thinking. Faith is abandonment to the Lord, abandonment to the higher knowledge, to the divine will. It's not evidence-based belief, but heart-centered belief supported by logic. Heart-centered belief supported by logic. May God bless you. See you again in another video.